In this video, we are continuing our final exam review and we'll look at a related rates problem. So this question is from the final practice problems part 2, question number 4. So the problem says, an aspiring YouTuber discovers that when they post a video on YouTube, their revenue from that particular video, R, in dollars, is given by R equals V over 250 times the square root of D plus 1, where V is the number of video views and D is the number of dislikes. So also this isn't actually the formula that YouTube uses to calculate revenue, but still YouTube does have an algorithm that they use to compute how much money people make when they monetize their videos. Okay, so then it says, suppose that their video has currently earned $200 in revenue and it has 81 dislikes. If the YouTuber wants their revenue from this video to be $5 per day, and the number of dislikes is increasing by 2 dislikes a day, at what rate would their number of views need to increase? Okay, so the first thing I want you to do is try this problem on your own. So pause the video, give yourself about 5 minutes at least to try this question. 5 minutes is probably not going to be enough time to finish the problem, so if you want a few extra minutes, definitely by all means go for it. But pause it at this point. 4, 3, 2, 1. Pause the video. Pause the video for 5 minutes and really try this question. The time that you take to pause these videos and try these problems is the most important time, I feel, in these video reviews. Alright, so hopefully you've done that. Hopefully you paused the video and tried this for about 5 minutes, really. Okay, so in these related rates problems, often the first step is to draw a picture if the picture will help us come up with some equation that we can work with. But in this problem, they give us an equation. The equation they give us is R equals V over this thing. Okay, so because of that, I don't think we need a picture here. I think we can move on to now identifying what it is that we know, what rates do we know, and what rate do we want to find. Okay, so what is it that we're trying to find? Well, we're trying to find at what rate would their number of views need to increase. So that's D something dt. What variable represents the number of views? Well, it's V. V is the number of video views. So we're looking for dV dt. Okay, and we want dV dt at sort of the at the current sort of spot. And currently it says that there's $200 in revenue. So we want dV dt, maybe I should say when the revenue is 200. Oops, sorry, not 20, 200. 200, and the number of dislikes, which is D, is 81. Okay, what is it that we know? What rate or rates do we know? Well, it says that the YouTuber wants their revenue to be $5 per day. So their revenue, so this is talking about how much they want their revenue to be going up. It wants it to be going up by $5 per day. So that's going to measure dr dt. So dr dt equals 5. And it's a positive number because their revenue is increasing. If their revenue is decreasing, which would be kind of weird and bad for the YouTuber if their revenue was going down, if their revenue is decreasing, we would have written that dr dt is a negative value. But here it's positive because revenue is going up. And we also know the rate at which the dislikes are changing. The number of dislikes, so that's going to be the rate of dislikes changing. That's d dt. It looks a little weird, but d dt. That's 2. It's increasing by 2 per day. All right. So from here, we write down our equation, but we already know what that is. And then we take, we differentiate this implicitly. So we take d dt of both sides of our equation. All right, so we're going to take d dt of the left-hand side, R, and we're going to take d dt of the right-hand side, V over 250 times the square root of D plus 1. All right, so we're taking the derivative with respect to t of both sides and differentiating implicitly. So doing that on the left, we get dr dt. Let me actually scroll that up a little bit so I can still see what I know. And on the right-hand side, one thing that's going to help with this derivative is noticing that this 250 is a constant that's multiplying my denominator. So I can move that constant to the front, in front of the derivative, and get 1 over 250 in front. And then times d dt of what's left. All right, so that's what's left, the derivative of that thing. And this is just going to make my computation a bit easier. So on the right-hand side, we have 1 over 250 in front. And that's going to multiply the derivative of this fractional function. And for this, I am going to need to use quotient rule. So we'll quotient rule low d high first. So low is root d plus 1. D high, derivative of the top, that's going to be dv dt. And then minus high d low. So high is v. And then d low, the derivative of the bottom. To take the derivative of square root of d, I need chain rule because the d is different from the variable I'm taking the derivative with respect to. So first I take the derivative of the outside part, that square root. And if I think of the square root as being a 1/2 power, I'd bring that power down and get 1/2 d to the negative 1/2. But I have to multiply that by the derivative of the inside, by the derivative of d. And that I write it as dt. Okay, and then to finish the derivative of the bottom, I need the derivative of 1, but that's just 0. Okay, finishing the quotient rule, all over low squared. So all over root d plus 1 squared. Okay, so we took the derivative of both sides, and now we're ready to plug in stuff that we know. So I know dr dt is 5. And on the right-hand side, we have 1 over 250. And now, for what my d value is, I know d at this instant is 81, so I'll get root 81 plus 1 dv dt, but that's what I'm trying to find, so I keep that as dv dt, minus v, so I don't know what v is, so we'll have to think about that. Okay, and then after that I have 1 over 2, and then I'm going to bring the d to the negative 1/2 to the bottom, and that'll make it a square root. And then I plug in my d value, which is 81. And then this gets multiplied by dt, which is 2. So that's what I get on the top. And on the bottom, I get square root of d, square root of 81, plus 1, that whole thing squared. All right, so we've plugged in, but I need to figure out what v is. If I can figure out what v is and plug that in, then I just rearrange and isolate for dv dt, the thing that I'm trying to find. So we've seen problems like this before, where we do our implicit differentiation, and then there's something extra that I need to know, like v. So what I can do is I can plug back into the original equation to find v. So I know that r is 200 and d is 81. I'm going to plug those into the original equation, this thing that's highlighted in blue. Okay, so I'm going to scroll it down, and I'm starting to plug in. So r is 200. That's going to be equal to v over 250 times square root of d, square root of 81, and then plus 1. So if I simplify this, we get v on top, 250 times root 81 is 9. 9 plus 1 is 10. Okay, so we have v over 2500. So at this point, sorry, let me put an implication arrow. So this, I'm trying to erase that equal sign. Okay, so this implies, so arrow, that v equals, if I were to multiply the 2500 to the left, we get 200 times 2500. And multiplying those, this is 500,000. So that's my v value. That's the number of views the video currently has, 500,000 views. So what I'm going to do now is take this v value and plug it in into this previous equation here. All right, so doing that, we get 5 equals 1 over 250 times root 81 is 9, plus 1 is 10. So we get 10 dv dt. And then minus, the 'two's are going to cancel. And we get minus v, which is 500,000. Okay, and then over 9, because that's square root of 81. And then all over, the bottom is going to be 10 squared, which is 100. All right, so now let's continue to work with this on the next page. All right, so I've copied down the same formula. So next, I'll multiply both sides by these denominators, the 250 and the 100. So that on the left will give me 5 times 250 and times 100. On the right, the denominators will now be gone. I'll have 10 dv dt minus 500,000 over 9. So multiplying out on the left, we'll get 125,000 equals, same thing on the right, 10 dv dt minus 500,000 over 9. Now let's add the 500,000 over 9 to the left. At this point, it's just some arithmetic, so I'm going to start to do this more quickly. All right, so we add the 500,000 over 9 to the left, and now we just want to divide both sides by the 10. So we'll get dv dt is equal to 125,000 plus 500,000, one more zero, over 9, that whole thing divided by 10. All right, and if we plug this into a calculator, this ends up being, and I round it to 2 decimal places, this ends up being 18,055.56. So what are the units? This is the rate of change of the number of views. So this is views per day. So they need to be getting about 18,000 views a day based off of where they're currently at for the revenue to increase by $5 a day on this video. This is rounded to 2 decimal places.